Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're about to go on a fascinating, totally intertwined journey through time. We are going to uncover the hidden lineage of martial arts history, specifically looking at Kung Fu and Karate. Let me tell you, by the time we finish up here, the way you look at a simple punch or kick is going to completely change. I want you to take a second and think about what comes to mind when you hear the words Kung Fu or Karate. Chances are your brain immediately jumps to old 1960s and 70s martial arts movies, right? You know the ones, the out-of-sync dubbing, the rigid rival schools, the grandmasters. But what if I told you that almost everything Western pop culture taught us about these ancient arts is essentially completely backward? Okay, let's dive into Section 1, Pop Culture Myths. We actually need to do a little bit of unlearning before we can see the real history that's hiding right in plain sight. So, thanks to that massive explosion of martial arts media in the West during the 1960s, a pretty huge misconception took root. The media presented Kung Fu as if it were just this single, uniform fighting style. It was basically packaged for entertainment as one distinct thing you could just walk into a dojo and learn straight out of a textbook. But historically speaking, that couldn't be further from the truth. Here is the actual reality. Kung Fu, or Gung Fu, is not one specific style at all. It's actually a massive umbrella term for a very wide range of Chinese martial arts. This isn't something that just popped up overnight. It evolved over thousands of years. We can literally trace its roots all the way back to the Zhou dynasty. And interestingly enough, it didn't even start purely as combat. Back in the 5th century BC, these movements were actually ancient Taoist exercises designed simply for health and vitality. It's a deep, complex, and highly varied tradition. Moving right along to Section 2, Comparing Kung Fu and Karate. Before we start tracing this history backward, we really need to establish where things stand today. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between the two arts as we know them in the modern world. On one hand, we have Kung Fu. It's Chinese in origin, characterized by highly circular, flowing, sometimes even animal-inspired movements, and it's deeply rooted in Buddhist mindfulness and meditation. But then, on the other hand, we have Karate. Originating in Okinawa and Japan, Karate heavily emphasizes linear, rigid, and incredibly fast direct strikes. Philosophically, modern Karate was shaped by the Japanese concept of Do, or the Way, which focuses intensely on self-discipline and sport. So today, they look and feel incredibly different. But those modern differences completely mask an incredible shared past. Let's peel back the first layer of the onion for Section 3, Karate's secret origins. You see, karate wasn't always this brightly lit sport practiced in suburban strip malls. It was quite literally born in the shadows. It originated in the Ryukyu Kingdom, which is modern-day Okinawa. During a period of really strict samurai occupation, weapons were entirely banned for the local population. No swords, no nothing. So the Okinawan people had to invent a highly effective system of unarmed defense just to protect themselves. Now, this martial art didn't just emerge out of thin air. It was a very calculated fusion. Step 1 was the indigenous Okinawan fighting method known simply as te, which just translates to hand. Step 2 happened when this local Okinawan fighting style was blended with southern Chinese Kung Fu styles brought over by traders and travelers. So karate is quite literally the child of Okinawan survival tactics and Chinese Kung Fu. And hey, if you want undeniable proof of this, look no further than the original name of the art. It wasn't originally called karate. It was called Tode, which literally translated to Chinese hand. The very name of the art proudly acknowledged its deep roots in Chinese Kung Fu. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the identity of the art deliberately shifted. In the early 1900s, a master named Gishin Funakoshi introduced Toad to mainland Japan. But to modernize it and make it a bit more acceptable to Japanese sport culture and rising nationalism, they actually changed the written character. They swapped out the character meaning Chinese for character meaning empty. So Chinese hand officially became empty hand, which is what the word karate means today. They literally erased the Chinese roots right out of the name. So this brings us to an absolutely pivotal question, a real plot twist for you. If Japanese karate ultimately comes from Chinese Kung Fu, where in the world did Chinese Kung Fu come from? Prepare to have your mind blown. Let's get into Section 4, the surprising Indian connection. We are pulling back the final layer to reveal a massive ancient secret connecting China and India. To really understand the scope of this incredible journey, we have to look at the timeline. Way back in 495 AD, the legendary Shaolin Temple is founded in China. Shortly after that, in the 6th century, a monk named Bodhidharma arrives and introduces physical exercises. Then, zoom all the way to the early 1900s when Funakoshi brings karate to Japan. What we're looking at is a massive, multi-century relay race of knowledge passed across borders. Let's talk about the figures who literally changed history here. First, the Shaolin Temple itself was founded by an Indian monk named Bodhidharma. Later on, another Indian monk, who is actually believed to be a prince from the Pallava dynasty of South India, named Bodhidharma, arrived. When he got there, he realized the monks were physically way too weak to meditate for long periods of time. So he drew upon his knowledge of an ancient South Indian martial art called Kalaripayattu to train them. You heard that right. Indian monks literally institutionalized what would eventually become Shaolin Kung Fu. Specifically, Bodhidharma introduced something known as the 18 Arhat hands, or sometimes called the 18 low-hand hands. And these weren't just random morning stretches. They were a very deliberate combination of that Indian martial art Kalaripayattu and traditional yogic breathing. It was completely designed to physically fortify the monks so they could endure these grueling marathon meditation sessions. These exact exercises became the foundational core of Shaolin Kung Fu.
And honestly, the influence of these Indian monks went so far beyond just punching and kicking. They established the Shaolin Temple itself. They introduced Chan Buddhism to China, which eventually migrated to Japan and became known worldwide as Zen Buddhism. Plus, they brought vital medicinal knowledge, including traditional Indian pressure point theory known as Marma. That theory directly shaped the whole concept of vital points in Asian martial arts. It was just a massive, holistic cultural exchange.
So, the crucial point of all this brings us to Section 5, an intertwined legacy.
Now, it is super important to note that indigenous fighting styles certainly existed in China long before Bodhidharma ever showed up. But the institutionalization of martial arts, those structured, highly disciplined, spiritually rooted systems that blossomed out of the Shaolin Temple, that traces directly back to these Indian spiritual and physical traditions.
To beautifully summarize our entire explainer, Kung Fu and karate are distinct martial arts with deeply intertwined histories. Think about it. The rigid, linear strikes of a modern karate tournament in Japan and the fluid, circular, animal-inspired forms of a kung fu practitioner in China, they all share this incredible ancient lineage rooted in the teachings of monks from India. It's like a giant puzzle finally fitting together. I'm going to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought. If a simple karate punch or a kung fu kick contains a hidden map of ancient cross-cultural exchange, connecting Okinawan survivalists, Chinese philosophers, and Indian monks, what other amazing cultural fusions are hiding in plain sight in your everyday world? Something to think about. Keep your eyes open, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me in this explainer.